Numbers 13. Numbers 13. This is in a series that I'm kind of tagging in with you guys, Not for Sale, out of the book of Joshua. We're kind of going back a little bit this week to the book of Numbers to kind of take it to the beginning there, where they have reached the edge of the promised land under Moses coming out of Egypt. And then Moses has instructed the children of Israel to send some men into the land to see what it's like, what the promised land, what God has declared is for them, what it's going to look like. And so the spies come back, and 10 of them give this report, verse 27, chapter 13. The 10 spies gave Moses this account. We went into the land to which you sent us, and it does flow with milk and honey. It is awesome. Here is its fruit, two men holding on a long stick, a big cluster of grapes. But the people who live there are very powerful, and the cities are fortified and very large. We even saw the descendants of Anak, giants there. The Amalekites live in the Negev, and the Hittites and Jebusites and the Amorites live in the hill country, and the Canaanites live near the sea and along the Jordan. So they're saying, yeah, it's really cool, it's awesome, but we don't think we can do it because the enemy is too strong. Now Caleb silenced the people before Moses and said, we should go up and take possession of the land. You should underline that on your iPad or your phone, because that's the title of the message today. Go up and take it. He says, for we certainly can do it. It should have taken them 11 days to get from Egypt to the promised land, but God didn't want to send them that way too fast. It took them 2 years. And now when they get there, they don't go in because they're too afraid, and then God punishes them for the rebellion. Fast forward 38 years. They've wandered in the wilderness. All the fighting men are dead. Moses is dead. Now it's Joshua's turn to lead. Verse 2 of chapter 1 of Joshua. God says, Moses, my servant, is dead. Now then you and all these people get ready to cross the Jordan River into the land I'm about to give them. Verse 6, Joshua, be strong and courageous, because you will lead these people to inherit the land I swore to their forefathers to give them. It's Joshua's time to go up and take it. And this, Laredo First Assembly, is God's word. Let's watch this clip. You may be seated.
You, my friends, are following in the very footsteps of history. Something beyond the power of words to describe. Human beings simply aren't built to function at the cruising altitude of a 747. Our bodies will be literally dying. Everest is another beast altogether.
How you doing? I'm back.
Doug Hansen.
What do you do when you're not climbing, Doug?
I deliver the mail.
First mailman on Everest?
Hope so.
I like that.
Sit down, man. Climatize.
How's the weather?
It's good.
I wish I was with you.
One day, you, me, and that little Sarah will all go climbing together.
So today's the day, huh?
It hurts. It's dangerous. Why? I have kids. They see a regular guy can follow impossible dreams. Maybe they'll do the same.
I'm on the top of Everest, Helen. We made it.
Go to Rob. There is a massive storm headed your way.
Oh no.
Come on! Get up! That's the wrong way! Doug, let's go! Hurry up!
Rob, can you hear me? You've got to get moving. You've got to come on down.
There's no oxygen. You go. I'm down. No, I'm not leaving you behind. Come on. It's gonna take all we got. We're all getting down together. Now let's go.
If anyone can make it, you can.
I mean, why would anyone want to climb Mount Everest? I mean, it's 29,000 feet tall. They say, or not actually say, the air is so thin that even if you're using supplemental oxygen, that every step you climb above 26,000 feet, which they call the death zone, you're basically dying as you climb. At least one person has died attempting to climb Mount Everest every year since 1900. And actually, if you wanted to pay the $70,000 and take 3 months out of your life and go to Nepal, or I guess you could go to the other side to China, and try to climb Everest, and you began your ascent, you would discover as you got up into the death zone that most of the dead climbers are still frozen in time, their bodies on the mountain, even as you climb. They got their climbing ropes around their waist, and they look much like they did when they started. Because on Mount Everest, there is no such thing as no man left behind. Because bringing someone down, that's already died is usually writing your own death sentence. So just leave them there. So why do people choose to do stuff like this? Why are they willing to go to such extremes to climb a mountain? It's because they want to do something with their life. On the video, even he says, I want to tell my kids I did something special. They want to do something that seems significant. Well, the great British explorers in 1924 was attempting to climb Mount Everest, and the reporter asked him, Robert Mallory, they said, hey, or George Mallory, why do you want to climb Everest? And he says, because it's there. Of course, a few months later when he attempted his climb, he died, disappeared. They would not find his body for 75 years. In 1999, they found that he had fallen into a crevice and was on the side. He's still there. You want to climb Everest, you can go see George Mallory frozen in time. Significance, achievement, the impossible. We love to dream about doing something great or going where no man has gone before. It's why we want to train for a 5K. It's why we maybe want to join the Marines. It's why we want to get into a marathon or run a triathlon. It's because I want to look at a high mountain. I want to look at something impossible, and I want to say, I want to do that. I think it was the last couple of years we've went to Hawaii, to the North Shore, and spent some time there with my family. A couple of years ago with Michelle and our kids and her mom, and then last year we went with Michelle and I, and then my two sisters and their husbands. And so, as we were getting ready to go this year, there was a mountain on the island of Oahu a hiking trail that I wanted to climb. It's called Koko Crater. So the year before, I kind of went up to it, looked at it, and I had not worked out as much, and I thought, I'll another time. This year, though, Koko Crater Trail got in my head. Now, off summer, I kind of trained to work on the steps. It's a brutal climb. It's an old railway tram straight up a volcanic crater. It's 1,200 times railroad ties. It's like climbing the World Trade Center 120 stories, basically 2 steps at a time. And it's got a really dangerous bridge section that you have to kind of cross, kind of almost by hand. And so I got up at 4 o'clock in the morning on our first day there. Michelle's still in bed. She's not into climbing. Got up there, and there was some Pearl Harbor Navy lieutenants who just got promoted. They were doing it as initiation thing. They were with me, and they were starting. And as I started up, here's what I learned about climbing a mountain. It's always further than it looks. It's always taller than it appears. And it's always harder than you've ever imagined. And put that on pause for a moment. Because it's one thing to go looking for a mountain to climb. It's one thing in the natural to say, hey, you know what? There's something I want to do. Like the people throughout history, the last couple hundred years said, I want to climb Everest. No one achieved it until 1953, and British, mountain climber explorer Sir Edmund Hillary, he did it with a Sherpa guide, Norgay. And since they did that in 1953, 4,833 people have climbed Mount Everest. Many of them several times. Blind people have climbed Mount Everest. Teenagers have climbed Mount Everest. People who have handicaps have climbed Mount Everest. So what was impossible now is rather routine, even though people still die when they do it. But that's the natural. It's one thing for you to decide, but it's another thing for God to look at you and Him to say, hey, here's the promised land. Oh, wait, It's mountainous. Oh, wait, it's got this big river at flood stage. Oh, wait, there's fortified cities with giants and enemies that are going to try to kill you. I'm going to give you that. So I want you to go up and take it. And so really, I mean, when you look at the children of Israel and Egypt and Moses, they really didn't have a choice. God brings them out with the plagues. He says go. And I'm not sure anybody really thought that going to the promised land was a really good idea. But God said, I want you to go take that. And so when God tells you to do something like that, when he gives you something that appears to be beyond your ability to do, here's what you need to know. It's because he wants you to have an abundant life, and he wants you to go into a place where he's promised you milk and honey. And that's Bible code language for you're going to have lots of financial, spiritual, relational blessings. You're going to be wealthy in every way, is what God is saying. So, but when God says, go up and take it, for Joshua, I mean, think about what he's looking at. I mean, his mentor, the great leader Moses, is dead. Now it's his responsibility to take 2 million people, men, women, children, into the promised land. And the Jordan River is at flood stage. The Jericho city is still a fortified city. There are still giants. There are still powerful enemies there. And even more importantly, here's the thought I'm thinking if I'm Joshua. If Moses can't do it, I mean, he talked to God face to face. He was a friend of God. He was more humble than anybody on the face of the earth, the Bible says. If Moses could not do it, how can I do it? How is it possible for me to lead these people? And the mountain we're talking about today, and we sang about it, that last song was powerful. The mountain we're talking about today is any obstacle that stands in the way of your dream or what God has promised you for a blessed life. The mountain is a metaphor for the impossible. It's for teenagers, a metaphor is an inanimate object that you compare to something that's kind of living, so English word. So in the Bible, when the children came out of Egypt, the mountain for them was the Red Sea. It's being trapped between Pharaoh's army and the Red Sea. It's standing in front of a 9-foot tall and a 9-inch giant with only a handful of rocks. That's a mountain. It's your brother has been dead and buried for 4 days and Jesus never showed up. And that's a mountain. It's a metaphor for the impossible. Like we talked about during the offering, maybe for you, though, it's a cancer diagnosis. Maybe it's a hopeless, desperate financial situation. Maybe it's a relationship where you're with your spouse or a child or a friend or a family member where it's hopeless. And God's saying, it's going to be okay. And you're looking at it and going, no, I don't see how it can happen. See, that's why God had to tell Joshua 4 times in chapter 1, be strong and courageous. Don't be discouraged. Don't be terrified, because Joshua was afraid. If you want to gain God's promise, it's not going to come to you. You got to go and take it. No one's going to give you the Super Bowl trophy. If you're the Vikings, the Eagles, the Patriots, or the Jaguars, one of those 4 teams has to go take it because there's something that stands in the way there. I mean, I know last month, you celebrated being in this building 2 years. I mean, when you started to dream about this building, you started to dream about, hey, a new place and all the things that are there. Today we stand in this worship center and it's beautiful, it's awesome. But the journey and the fight to be a light to the border of Texas and Mexico, to be a light into this city and God to move and revival to break out, it's a tough battle and it's not easy. And sometimes the enemy seems so strong that you think you're not going to make it, not only as a family, but even corporately as a church. This may shock you, but there are times that your pastors will think, I don't think we can make it. So, but the end of the story, if you turn to the end of Joshua and the end of all those kind of things, he gains the promised land. He has strength and courage. As for me and my house, we'll serve the Lord, he thunders in Joshua 24. And all the things God promised him came to pass. So what did he do that we can learn from? And so we'll use some modern language to use his principles. So we got 3 things today in the next 30 minutes or so. Much shorter than Pastor Oscar. So, the series is not for sale. I promise we're not going to sell it out. We're going to go take it. So point 1, if you want to go take it, first thing you got to do is play poker or go all in. You got to take all your chips and you got to shove them into the middle of the table on a single hand. Because Joshua 3:15 says this, now the Jordan River is at flood stage during the harvest, yet as soon as the priest who carried the ark reached the Jordan and their feet touched the waters, the water from upstream stopped flowing. Joshua's first assignment, okay, Joshua, there's the promised land. Only thing is there's this river that runs in the middle of it. That's like keeping you from going in, and it's at flood stage. And it's not just the men who know how to swim, it's the adults and the females who don't know how to swim, and it's all the children, and it's all their cattle, and it's all their animals. How are they going to get an entire nation with everything they have across the Jordan River? God says, just go, start walking. Now, it's not as easy as it sounds. I mean, it's an impossible task. There's no boats, there's no bridges, there's no helicopters or planes you can crack across. And like movie Dunkirk, there's not all these boats coming to rescue you from the other side. And that's what I can describe it as when I was telling the early service, when I was a kid, my grandmother had a pasture there in East Texas, maybe 15, 20 acres in the back. And so we would go down as kids, 8, 9, 10 years old, and play in the pasture. Well, there was a little creek that ran in the back part of the property. It was about maybe this wide. But when it would rain, it would be as wide as this stage, and it would be probably 10, 15 feet deep, and it would just flow like a torrent. Well, because it's East Texas and Kilgore, the oil is everywhere, remnants of oil there. So there's oil pipes that run across three or four spots on the property across the creek. Well, one of the fun things as a child was, the other fun things to do on the other side of the creek. It didn't matter to us if we're at flood stage because we're invincible. So I would spend all afternoon walking back across the old, slippery, round pipe across. If I'd ever fallen in, I'm dead. Now, I'm not thinking that when I'm a kid, but my mom would have executed me if she'd have found out what I was doing. This is not an easy task. Crossing a river that is raging. And so, go back to Moses and the children when they come out of Egypt. Because they leave, the plagues, they get there, and all of a sudden Pharaoh goes, we don't want them to go. And they chase them. And they get on the edge of the Red Sea and the army behind them, and they start whining. Moses, it'd have been better if we had just died and we had better things, died it back. We're going to die in the desert. We want to go back to Egypt where it was easier. Why did you bring us out here? Moses, you're a terrible leader. And so Moses begins to cry out to God, God, help us. We're trapped. And God's answer, if you read the Bible, Exodus 14, it says, Moses, I'm so sorry I put you in a difficult position. I know the Red Sea is in front of you. I know the enemy is behind you. I made a mistake. I don't know what to do. I'm sorry, you're just all going to die. No, that's not in the Bible. Moses is praying. God, Red Sea, Pharaoh, help. People are ready to stone Moses. And God's loving, caring response in Exodus 14:15 is, why are you whining and crying to me? Just move. Just move. Moses is like thinking, move. There's that ocean in front of us. But you got to go all in. And he raises his stick. Poop. The ocean splits. The Red Sea, and they walk. See, to go all in is to risk everything. Like in poker, you're risking all of your money because you believe these 5 cards you hold is worth it. In business, it's taking all of your capital and pushing it in to that one business venture that you think is going to be fulfillment of your dream. In relationships, oh, it's the one person that my heart, oh, I love her or him so much. This is the person. I'm going to place all my hopes and dreams on this one person, and we're going to live the rest of our life together. That's probably the biggest risk of them all. In your spiritual life, it's the willingness to risk everything on that still small voice of the Holy Spirit that says, just trust me. Just start walking. It's Gideon saying, I'll face the Midianite army with 300 guys holding a torch and a pitcher of water. It's Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego saying, I'm not going to bow down to the wicked, powerful, evil king and his idol. If we burn, we burn. It's Esther saying, if I go into the king and he doesn't give me the scepter, he's going to kill me. If I perish, I perish. It's just the willingness to say, I'm going to do it because God said so, even though it doesn't look like it makes sense. Now, about this time last year, I'm on staff at our church. I'm the executive pastor at Trinity Church in Cedar Hill. That's just a glorified term. It means I do all the things my boss doesn't want to do. And so last year, he was getting ready to go to Cancun with a group of leaders in our church to kind of cast a new vision. And so at the last minute, a couple of days before, a couple of people that were going on the trip didn't go. So he walks up to Michelle and I about 48 hours, and he says, Tim, Michelle, I really need y'all to go on this trip and take the place that the people didn't drop and kind of help pastor all the people that are there for the 3 days. And I thought, I can suffer on the beaches of Cancun for a couple of days. Yes, sir, I'd love to do that. So we head that way. We get down there, and part of the 3 days is casting a vision to the couples that are there that he called Project 5000, that above their tithe, above their offerings, above their missions pledges, monthly pledges, above their capital campaign pledges, asking each couple to give $5,000 2017 to a project in missions that we wanted to do that was in Vietnam, almost $100,000 total. And to build 2 Bible schools in a church, and everybody buys in, and it was cool. It was great. Everybody's excited and all about it. So when we get back, they're going to kind of keep meeting with Project 5000, all the leaders, about once every 2 months. Well, they have a meeting a couple weeks after they get back, and so people in the thing, because we went to Mexico, they start texting me, hey, bring this to the meeting. And so, I'm not in the Project 5000. I was just there for that one trip. So I walk up to the pastor, and I go, hey, sir, I said, do you want me to go to this meeting next week or not? What do you want? I know I'm not part of that. And he goes, are you going to give $5,000 to Project 5000? Well, now I didn't say any of this, but this is what I'm thinking. Well, no, sir. I just went because you told me I needed to go help pastor. I have 2 kids in college right now in a private university. I have a daughter who's about to get married, and I have to pay for that wedding. We have a missions monthly pledge. I don't have $5,000, so no, I'm not being involved in Project 5000. It's a great thing for rich people, which most of the people in the group had well-to-do. So I didn't answer. I just kind of laughed and walked away. That night, I woke up, and I just felt the Lord say, you need to do this. I don't have $5,000. Just trust me. Take your bank account, take your finances, just go all in. And I had a year, but even then I'm trying to figure out, how do I do all the other stuff I'm supposed to do and do this too? Fast forward 30 days later. We'd given, I think, maybe $500 by this time, because I don't know how we even did that. And I was asked to do, a friend asked me to do the wedding of one of his family members. And can I tell you a secret that I told the early service? You can't ever tell Pastor Oscar that I said this. Most pastors, they don't enjoy weddings very much. If we were asked to do a wedding on the outside, yes, it's so exciting. Yeah, yes, I'd love to do your wedding. On the inside, we're going, oh, God, kill me now. And I know we're supposed to rejoice with those who rejoice, but that's spiritual. And sometimes, even as a pastor, you can get non-spiritual inside your sinful nature. And because weddings are like mothers-in-law and brides and wedding coordinators and everybody telling. I mean, it can get very complicated. And it's the wedding rehearsal, and then it's the wedding rehearsal dinner, and then it's the wedding that you need to be there early for, and then all the things that go with it, and then prepare. And no, we don't want to do a candle. We want to do unity sand now. What is unity sand? Where did that come from? I mean, it's just, we don't want to throw rice. It's just everything that goes with it. And then you're always going to be blessed. Maybe. Like a third of the time you won't get any money at all. Thank you, Pastor, you're so good. And you're going, it's got to be a kingdom reward here somewhere. Sometimes you get 100, sometimes you get 200. And if you've died and gone to heaven, someone gives you $300. I mean, and it's just not worth it. But you do it because you love the people, and it's part of your job. So obviously I wasn't looking forward to it. So it was at a hotel, and it was a nice place, but we did the marital counseling the night before on a Friday night, and it was really good. It worked out well. I enjoyed it. It was fun. So the next day we go to the wedding, and a small family, and they didn't want 5 minutes. The wedding was 5 minutes outside in a courtyard of a hotel. Had the dinner, it was cool. Sitting there with the guy who asked me to do it, he said, do I send the check for your honorarium to the church, or does it come to you? I go, no, I said it's wedding because it's like personal. It comes to me personally, doesn't go through the church. He goes, okay. And he's wealthy and a businessman, and he doesn't have, I'm pretty sure he's going to forget, even though I know he means to. So I said, well, I enjoyed it. It was fun. I mean, I'm glad I did it. I'm a pastor. It's what I got to do. 5 days later on Thursday, a little card comes in the mail with his name on it. Open up the card. There's the check, the honorarium for the wedding. Michelle sitting across, and she could tell that I'm a little stunned by the check. And I go, how much do you think it is? She goes, well, is it 500? Eyes sparkling. I said, no. I said, it's $5,000. See, if you go back, no, I don't have $5,000. I can't do what you're asking me to do. But he says, trust me. Okay, God, I'll step out in faith. I'll just start walking. 30 days later, I have $5,000. And then when I want to go to God, why can't you just do that for my new car or for my new home or my second house in Hawaii? Why does it have to be for this missions? But no, I realized that God will make provision whenever I step in because he's taken me places where he's promised me to take me. And that's a principle that you need to understand. If he speaks to you, just do it. The river stopped flowing. They walked across. Something happened upstream that stopped it. They walked across on dry ground, all 2 million people and everything they had, and now they're in the promised land. And the biggest miracle, it says, they walked across on dry ground. Because if the Rio Grande dries up right now and you try to walk across it tomorrow, what's the problem? It's muddy. Mud. You're going to sink in the mud. But it somehow miraculously, God not only stops the river from flowing, he also dries the ground where they can walk across it. Go all in. Second thing. This is an old Dottie Rambo song, so I stole this from a 1970s kind of country gospel song. Go to the rock. They've crossed the Jordan. And this is the thing about God. I'm taking you to the promised land. I'm taking you thing, and he does a miracle like last year, $5,000. I got it, right? So now the problem is I'm in Project 5,000. So what does that mean? It's 2018. And we're going to Cancun on Wednesday. And so now I'm in Project 5,000. And we're doing another project this year. So now I've got to come up with another $5,000 this year. And so all of the miracles in 2017, I've lost all the faith and all the courage. And all I can see is, yeah, I know you stopped up the Jordan River. I know that it was dry ground, but there's Jericho. What do I do now? You know what Joshua did? He got scared. And he went by himself. And he takes a walk toward Jericho to kind of see, is it really as tough? And as he gets close, Joshua 5 verse 13, now when Joshua was near Jericho, he looked up and saw a man in front of him with a drawn sword in his hand. Joshua went up to him and asked, why? I wouldn't go up to a guy with a drawn sword, but Joshua did. He says, are you for us or are you for our enemies? Are you on our side or are you on their side? Are you for the Vikings or are you for the Eagles? But you know what he did? He stumbles into the Old Testament pre-incarnate Jesus, like Jacob who wrestles with Jesus. You know, back in Genesis, Joshua has run into him because the man says, hey, I'm not on your side and I'm not on Jericho's side. He said, I'm on my side. He says, I'm not for you, I'm not for them, but as captain of the Lord's army, I have now come. Joshua runs into the captain of the host, the commander of the Lord's army. He runs into Jesus. And Jesus gives us a principle here that you need to understand, because don't assume that your plans are God's plans. We can do it this way. This is how we can do it. We can raise the money for the building. We can do this. We can do this. I can have this plan. But then God says, no. I'm not on your side. I'm not on that side. He goes, I'm on my side. And the second thing here that's real clear is he says, before there are strategies, before you make plans, before I tell you anything about Jericho, take off your shoes and begin to worship. And Joshua falls down in reverence, takes off his sandals because the place where he's standing is holy ground. You know, I'm the oldest of 4 children. I have 3 younger sisters. My youngest sister, probably when she was like 37 or 38, like 5 years ago, she had a report that breast cancer had come in. And, it's tough. I mean, she had her children at that time, the 2 boys that they have were, 7, 10 years old. Just tough. And ultimately they have to do a double mastectomy, 8 or 9 hour surgery, and then they do the reconstruction. And you believe, promised land, miracle, the mountain that stands in your way. God, healing is on the other side of this, and all these kind of things. Then my plan, right? Chemotherapy, surgery, her plan, prayer, everything's good. 2 years later, she goes back for a checkup. They tell her that the cancer has metastasized into the bone of her breast. You know anything about cancer, when it metastasizes in your bone, it's just a death sentence. I mean, you can't cut it out. Can't, just doesn't go away. Pray, all these kind of things. So about 1.5 years ago, she goes back for a year checkup after doing chemo again. And, again, we're just going to try to shrink it. We can't get rid of it. Can't cut it out anymore. The doctor looks at her and goes, I don't understand. I mean, the cancer is there. I've got the pictures, but I can't find it. The doctor's not a believer, and she goes, I guess it's so small that we can't even see it. Now, because the doctor's saying, well, cancer doesn't go away. And just completely healed, and it's gone. Now, but that's not the way I would have done it. As soon as she got cancer, it would have been gone. As soon as, okay, well, then we have to go through the mastectomy and all those kind of things. Okay, well, then it's gone. It certainly wouldn't have come back. We have to go through a 4 or 5 year journey of living and walking in fear. And if you listen to her testimony, she'll talk about the last time, because the first time she goes through the surgery, she puts all of her wigs back up into the closet just in case it comes back. This time when she got the report, she went and took all of her wigs and she threw them all away, because there's no plans for them coming back. So I'm just telling you, the way we think it's supposed to work is not always the way God works it, because it's my side, I'm going to do it my way, and you're going to have to walk my path. That's why you go to the rock in prayer. That's why you go to the rock in worship. That's why you go to the rock in the Word. That's why last month, when you're also facing your own financial crisis with your church, can we make it as a church? Are we going to be able to pay the bills, the light, the salaries, the mortgage, and all those kind of things that God steps in and He does a miracle? Through your faithfulness and your giving. But like my own thing at Project 5,000, it's 2018. The bills still come. We still look at the mountain. We still look at when are we getting to the promised land? You got to go to the rock and you got to stay at the rock. That's the only way you go up and you take what God has promised. And then finally, you go all in, you go to the rock, and finally, you go the distance. And that's not just a Michael Bolton song. Make Greg laugh. Joshua chapter 6, verse 2. The Lord says to Joshua, this is right after he meets him. And now he's talking to him. First Joshua worships, now he's talking to him. He says, see, I have delivered Jericho into your hands along with its king and its fighting men. And again, this is one of those moments where I just insert myself into biblical history because I'm reading this and Jesus is talking to Joshua and he goes, there's Jericho. See, I have delivered it into your hand, the king and all of its fighting men. And if I'm Joshua, I'm going, no, I'm not seeing it. There's Jericho. There's the king. The fighting men are still there. I'm not seeing it, God. What are you seeing that I'm not seeing? See, God already sees the victory before He ever even starts the process of you conquering the enemy. And then He begins to give him instructions. Here's how you make happen what I'm seeing. He says, march around the city with all the armed men. Do this for 6 days. Have 7 priests carry trumpets of ram's horns in front of the ark. On the 7th day, march around the city 7 times with the priest blaring and blowing the trumpets. So how many times are they to march around the city? 13 times. 1 time for 6 days, 7 times in the 7 days. They're supposed to blow trumpets, the 7 priests. And the Lord also says, all the men marching aren't allowed to speak, say a word, or shout for 7 days and the 13 trips around. That would eliminate some of you from not being able to, if you weren't able to talk. And then once we do all the process, then we shout, and then God's going to do something special. They don't know how it's going to happen. They walk around 1 time. Okay, nothing happened. They walk around 3 more times, 3 more days. Nothing happened. They walk around every 6 days. Wall, nothing. It's all the same. They start the sunrise on the 7th day. They walk around 5 times. Still nothing. What if they would have quit after 5 days? What if on the 7th day they said, you know what, we've done this 6 times. I don't see anything. I'm done with this. Remember Daniel back in chapter 10 when he's praying and he's fasting and praying and the angel after 3 weeks finally comes to him and says, hey, Daniel, as soon as you began to pray, God sent me with the answer. But the prince of Persia, a demonic force, withstood me in the heavenlies. Michael had to come help me and I've just now got here. My question is, what if Daniel had stopped praying after 20 days? Would have answer ever got there? You've got to go the distance. Back to Hawaii. I start my climb. Up the railroad ties. I get about halfway up. And the Navy lieutenant guys that are 20-something are dying. And I'm thinking, no beautiful sunrise is worth this pain. And then I think, vacation is supposed to be fun. What am I doing on this stupid hike? And then because I'm 56, the next thought is, I'm going to die of a heart attack. And then Michelle's going to divorce me because she didn't want me to do this in the first place. But I'd seen a movie on the way over on the flight to Hawaii. The movie was Creed. And Rocky was training Apollo Creed's son. And when they start their training, Creed is going to face this boxer that's impossible to beat. But Rocky teaches him this thing. He says, one step, one punch, one round at a time. So it hit me on the mountain. I need a Creed. Put my head down. One step, one breath, 1 minute at a time. And when I get to the top, it is beautiful. And then I got to come back down. And literally, when I got down, after it was probably a total of 4 hours, hour and a half up, hour on the mountain, and an hour and a half down. I literally just got to the bottom and just laid there for like an hour. Couldn't get up. I had my legs in. But it was worth it. I'd gone up and taken it. But that's in the natural. See, what stands before us is our spiritual Jericho. God is asking the Laredo's First Assembly to go up and take what He has promised. As leaders in your family, husbands, wives, single moms, single parents, He's asking you to go up and take what He's promised over your family, your children. As teenagers, young adults, in your schools, in your workplaces, He's asking you, there's territory I want to give you. There's special things I want to do for your life. You know, some things have to be worth fighting for. They can't be for sale like the series is based upon. The call of God is on your life. It's on your word. It's on this church. It's on your family. It's on your legacy. It's there. You got to set it apart. Nothing else matters. I close with this. Last week, Monday was Martin Luther King Day, where we honor Dr. King and his life and his legacy in our nation. And our church is South Dallas. It's located strategically in an area where we're very diverse. I mean, Hispanics, African Americans, and Caucasians, we all worship together. But our city, Cedar Hill, is predominantly African American. So if we don't discuss or mention Martin Luther King, I mean, it's going to be a problem. So Pastor had asked me, I was doing the offering the next day, and he'd asked me on Saturday, he goes, I need you to incorporate Martin Luther King into the offering, because we don't have a video this year. I went, how do I incorporate Martin Luther King into the offering? I love history, so I did a little research and stuff. And so I was going online. I was looking at his life and different things. And I thought, let me go check out the speech, the I Have a Dream speech in 1963 on the March on Washington. And as I was reading about that, I saw this name, George Raveling. I said, hey, I know that guy. I go, he was the basketball coach at the University of Iowa and University of Southern California in the 80s and 90s. I go, what does he have to do with Martin Luther King's speech? So I clicked on his name on Wikipedia and digs you into his life. So he was 26 years old. He was an assistant, George Raveling, at the University of Villanova in Philadelphia. So 2 days before the March on Washington Have a Dream speech, him and a friend decided, hey, let's just go to Washington, D.C., and let's kind of watch Dr. King and all the things that go on. So they drive, a couple hours to get to D.C. from Philadelphia. And then the day before the speech, they're walking around the National Mall, and one of the organizers of the event looks at George Raveling and his friend, and they're both 6'4", 6'5" African Americans, and they think, hey, these guys will be good security for our event tomorrow. And so they ask them if there'll be security for the event. Of course, yeah, I would be happy to. And so George Raveling will wind up on the day of the speakers, he'll wind up standing about 3 or 4 feet to the left of the podium, right where Dr. King is going to give the speech. And as Dr. King, the last person on the podium, gets up and begins to deliver his speech, if you know anything about the historical component of this speech, I Have a Dream was not mentioned in his written text. No part of that was. But it's something he would normally say in churches, like he would go into kind of some spontaneous speaking about what he sees over his nation and his family and stuff. And so Mahalia Jackson is standing behind him, and when he nears the end of his speech, she says, tell him about the dream, Martin. And so he launches into his history, says ad lib, I would say maybe the Holy Spirit. I have a dream. that one day this nation will live out its creed that all men are created equal. I have a dream that one day my 4 little children will live in a nation where they're judged not by the color of their skin, but by the content of their character. I have a dream, he goes on to say, and he finishes and he folds up his 3-page speech and he puts it in his pocket. George, 26 years old, 1963, standing right here. Never met Dr. King, but he's doing security. He turns to him and says, Dr. King, can I have that speech? Dr. King folds it up. George takes it, puts it in his pocket. For years, no one knows he has it. 4 years ago, a collector called him when he found out that he had this speech, offered him $3 million for it. He's nearing the end of his life. He could use the money. You know what he said? Not for sale. He goes, that belongs to my family. That belongs to Dr. King's legacy. That belongs to my ethnic people. He goes, it's not for sale at any price. So that's my question today. What's not for sale in your life? What's set apart as holy to the Lord? Because if you don't have that, you'll never have the courage and the faith to do the things God has commanded you to do, to go up and take what He has promised you to do.